Hi, thank you to Crack Northern Ireland for inviting me to my very first Imagine Belfast festival. Although I can't be with you in person, I welcome you into my home. Now, I want to start with the crack. I want you to join in and please don't let me down, okay? Knock knock. I'll tell you at the very end. I've written a little something that I hope will enable you to think and act differently about isms, particularly sectarianism and racism. I've called it Driving Change. Did you know sectarianism and racism have human drivers? Many speak about these isms as if they somehow work automatically, by themselves, but they don't. For example, we often hear phrases from well-meaning people who say, racism's awful. But I want you to think about that for a moment. Isn't it more accurate to say that the actions of racist people are awful? The actions driven by racist Toms, Dicks and Marys? Putting names and faces to racist actions makes a difference. It enables us to see the driver. Some people talk about systemic racism. Again, who are the drivers that turn the car keys, who write the policies, who drive racism into systems? You see, when we change the way we think about racism and how it travels around, when we identify, draw out the human drivers, we can change the way we think and act about their driving and their instructors. What most of us have been doing up until now is navigating the impact of the oncoming ism vehicle. We've been getting out of the way or sometimes banging on the bonnet in frustration. But it's time to stop all of that. It's time to take a good look at the driver and their instructor and understand what needs to change at the depot, at the garages and at the headquarters. Depots, garages and headquarters include those located at home, at school and in your government. Let's take Stormont for instance. This is a place where people gather to service vehicles, to provide appropriate resources to make sure vehicles are well maintained. But just as some mechanics will have an idea about how to service and maintain most vehicles, we need to include models that some mechanics might not be familiar with. Instructors who make genuine efforts to become familiar with all vehicles will be more able to encourage good driving habits. Mechanics who become familiar with all vehicles will be more able to identify early when an oil change is needed to produce better drivers, better people. Drivers who are more responsible, drivers who when they see you coming don't toot their horn shouting obscenities out the window, enjoying scaring the life out of you or scarring you for life. Drivers who don't put people at risk of significant harm. I want to bring one case of dangerous driving to your attention involving children. A female I grew up with was in a religiously mixed union. She was a Protestant and her husband was a Catholic. They had one daughter aged 5 at the time. I'll call her Rita. She was raised as a non-denominational Christian. Her mother's way of showing Protestant without saying Protestant in a mixed relationship. My daughter, Cara, was aged 6 at the time. One of my female friends and I had travelled to Northern Ireland to visit, and we were all sat at the dining table waiting for dinner, a big bowl of scallion champ. My friend was laughing loudly, announcing that she'd boiled the spots to a pulp, when suddenly Rita burst into song. Cara has a black face, Cara has a black face. She put her foot down and drove that ism vehicle straight for my child in a taunting, abusive manner, tooting her horn wildly. I recognised that ism vehicle and the toot of that horn from my own childhood. I'd seen and heard for myself the way children were taught to drive those ism vehicles. The driving instructors used a method that I have named Raceophilia. Raceophilia is a dehumanizing, mind-raping, child abusive grooming process similar to that used in paedophilia. Yes, I remember those ism vehicles and their drivers. My friend and her partner said and did nothing as their child continued driving that ism vehicle. I held my daughter's hand tightly because she knew that I would bring that car to a stop, one way or another. I had long since stopped providing myself as a safety belt, you know, the one who rescues the instructor and the driver. We waited the way you do at traffic lights to see if Rita's parents would go red for stop and remove their child from that ism vehicle. Eventually her father pressed the button on the signal box. Rita, that's enough. He stepped in front of the car and Rita came to a stop with an awkward handbrake turn. She didn't want to stop. Her mother looked on from the side of the road and said, "Aw, she's just a child. She doesn't know any better." But we were horrified that Rita had driven that ism vehicle in the first place. Who taught her? It wouldn't cross my mind to teach my child to drive the car of sectarianism. She wasn't taught to drive any car, let alone one that targeted the religion of Rita's father. Tooting the ism horn the way I'd been taught as a child to the tune of "You're a Catholic, you're a Catholic," or other derogatory words to that effect. My child wasn't in possession of the words to start such a car. She was never encouraged to be curious about what it would be like to even drive that type of vehicle. Not even for the banter, not even for the crack. She didn't even recognize that car's horn, but she was clearly alert to the danger by the driver's body language and the fact that the car was being steered right towards her. She was a child who did know better because she wasn't encouraged to single out individuals to taunt for any reason. Unlike me, as a child growing up in Ulster, I had been taught to drive cars of sectarianism, tooting my horn in a way that was designed to target people like Rita's father, to scare the life out of them, swerving into them, shouting out the window, "Go back to your own side of the road," making them jump out of my way, just for fun. It's just a joke, isn't it? I wanted to copy the other drivers I'd grown up with. I thought they were good drivers, careful drivers. Well, they used to check inside their cars, under their bonnets for isms. But the planting of those isms weren't always visible immediately, and it wrecked cars, killed people. I have unlearned that ugly, took lessons, read books, and I have my oil checked regularly. I've learned better from other good drivers, and my driving has improved. Some drivers want to become better, and some need support. Some realise they've been taught bad habits and they need to change. I want to leave you with 2 examples to consider. Number 1, for almost 20 years, Northern Ireland has benefited from the driving school that is the Black Taxi Tours of Belfast. This lucrative business has been successfully operating despite the driving history of its operatives. Now you have to remember where these guys came from. Ex-members and prisoners of previous terrorist groups from both sides of the sectarian divide. And they have come together trying to raise the standards for better driving. Children benefit, people benefit, and the city benefits. This driving school adds value to the thriving nightlife and the economy and provides the city with an opportunity to attract tourism. We could learn some lessons from researching this company to find out, how did they become better drivers? How did they unlearn the dangerous and abusive horn-tooting language of their past? I wonder how many specialist instructors, drivers and mechanics they have. Number 2. You might be aware of the efforts being made in Northern Ireland to create more integration in schools. Remember, schools are depots, places where people learn driving skills for life. I suggest that in order to create better drivers in these schools requires a change of oil or a change of language. A shift away from the current language that follows abusive horn tooting and bad habits, because dangerous driving can kill. A language that doesn't look to self-trigger and accelerate speed at the sight of another human being's face, whatever the colour. A language that doesn't dehumanize people and put their life at risk because the driver has been taught a sinister meaning about the colours of the traffic signals. Red's not always for danger, sometimes it just means stop. Orange and green traffic signals can and do work together, setting a good example in getting drivers ready to move at a reasonable speed with due care and attention. I have developed that language in post-colonial oculism, a new inclusive and rehumanizing language that puts human beings first and encourages drivers in the right direction towards changing habits for life. Literally. Children deserve better roads with better drivers, and it's our duty to ensure they have excellent driving schools with great instructors. I would like to end with a quote from Nelson Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. No one is born hating another person because of the colour of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Now remember at the start of my reading, the joke. Knock, knock. Toot. That's right, toot, toot. Toot, toot. That's right, the change drivers. I can hear people jingling their car keys, so please, drive carefully. Thank you.